everyone, I'm Ari here with Rachel, and we're your hosts for the Myriad Writer podcast. This week, we're on episode 237, and we're asking, what are the benefits of hosting guests on your blog? Before we start, if you're enjoying the show, consider checking out our coffee page. You can follow the page for free, as we have plenty of freebies for all. And if you're feeling a little bit generous, you can become a Myriad Writer for $2 a month. You'll help to keep the show going and also have access to a load of bonus content and episodes that we put in. If that's not your style, but you still enjoy the podcast, then do please subscribe wherever you're listening if you haven't already. Okay, so we're talking benefits of hosting guests on a blog, and you might be sat there going, do people still blog? Yeah, actually, surprisingly, blogging hasn't fully gone away. I did think when all the videos and YouTube and TikToks came out that blogging would take a massive nosedive, but there's actually still quite a lot of people who do blog. So it is a very useful episode. Okay, so let's talk about benefits. And we both say this as both Rachel and I have blogs, and we have in the past had guests. And maybe we will again. That makes it sound like there are no benefits of dealing with guests anymore.
Okay, in our defense, having guests actually is quite a bit of work. So that's kind of why we both needed a break for a little while.
That is true. Yeah, it's there are a lot of benefits. We're not saying it's easy though. So you have to go into it thinking, yeah, I'm going to have guests on my blog. These are the benefits, but be aware of some of the things it can take, and we will mention some of those later on. But one of the things it can bring to your blog is it can give it a sense of, I'm not even sure which word of this is right, but credibility or authority. If you have a blog that's specifically about a topic, like both myself and Rachel have writer blogs where we share tips and tricks, similar to this podcast. If you then bring on authors or experts in things like publishing or book cover design, it adds to your content. It adds to the legitimacy of the information you are sharing. Obviously, the little caveat there is you need to make sure that the people you bring on are credible. So you want to bring on, in our case, we reached out to people who were actually book cover designers and had those people on. We had authors who had been both traditionally published and self-published and shared their information. And a lot of the time it was personal information, because everyone's path is different in things like this. But that goes for any type of blog, no matter what your blog niche is. And if you don't know that, you should probably try and have a niche. I think we've done episodes about blogging before. I'll try and remember to tag them in. But you should try and make sure that if you have guests, that you think about who they are and what they bring to your blog. That is a benefit, because, as I said, it does kind of boost your blog up, especially the level of guests you have. If you manage to get a multi-million bestseller author to be interviewed on your blog, excellent. We haven't managed it ourselves, but I guarantee it would give better credibility.
I just want to add to that real quick and mention that you also have to think about your audience. Obviously, you want to have somebody as a guest that has the credibility and knows what they're talking about. They don't need to be an expert, because, as Ari said, everybody's journey is different. But they do need to know what they're talking about, and you want to make sure that whatever they're talking about will cater to the audience that you already have. I don't know about any of you, but I often get people emailing me and reaching out about wanting to be a guest on my website, and it's almost always about yoga. And I'm like, there is nothing on my website that says anything about yoga. I don't work out. I don't talk about exercise. I don't do any of that. And obviously, my audience that reads my blog, they're reading it because they want to know more about writing advice, or they want to know more about my books, or read my book reviews, or whatever. They're not there to learn yoga techniques or whatever it is that they want to talk about. So just keep that in mind. Don't just reach out to anybody to be a guest on your blog. Make sure that it is relevant to your audience so that your audience gets something out of it. And hopefully your audience will find someone new to read, your guest blog as well, because it's all connected.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. That is perfect, because my other point was it gives you more exposure. Because if you have a guest on your blog, then that guest will most likely have followers, readers. If they have their own blog, they'll have followers. If they are a writer, they'll have readers, hopefully. And that means you have increased your readership, because people who follow them, people who are interested in them, will come to your blog, and maybe they wouldn't have done that until they met you. But as Rachel said, if you're just willy-nilly picking random people that aren't connected to your niche, or that aren't the best guests you could have, it's not going to give you the right exposure. In fact, it could go horribly, horribly wrong. Might be an idea to make sure you are careful about who you have on your blog. But if you do pick the right people, if you do reach out and give other people a platform on your blog, it does increase your exposure, and hopefully it increases theirs as well, which is why it's kind of a, you know, a simpatico system where you do something, they do something, and you both benefit. That's technically the idea anyway.
Yeah, because exposure, you'll get exposure from these guests because, wow, that was a good sentence. One of these ways that you would gain exposure from having guests on your blog is through backlinks. And this is like an analytical perspective of having guests on your blog, but backlinks are a huge benefit because, again, exposure, but also if you don't know what backlinks are, it's basically just a link back to your website, and the guest will have a link back to their website and social media and so on and so forth. Google loves links. They love internal links. They love external links because it shows that your website has authority. And if other websites are linking to your website, then it shows Google that, oh, well, if this website trusts that website, then this must be a good website. So when you have guests on your blog, they should go on their own website and link back to their guest post on your website and say, hey, I was featured over here, go check it out, so that people will come to your blog. And in return, on the guest post, you'll probably give your guest a byline and say, article was written by this person, here's a website, here's a link to their website and their social media and so on and so forth. And then it just kind of creates this link circle. So your readers can get to know the guest, but then the guest's audience can also get to know you and check out your website and your work.
Yeah, those links are really important. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of blog platforms like WordPress have the reblog button. So like if you create a blog post and you put it on your website, at the bottom, if you have it activated, you can have a reblog button. And the point of that is not only does it reblog onto somebody else's blog, but if you wrote the blog, if you had a blog post with a guest and then they took that exact thing and put it directly on theirs, on their blog or somebody else's blog, or it was moved around on several different websites and they didn't use that reblog, I have a feeling, I might be wrong, but I thought that was something where search engine would class it as kind of like repeated information rather than reblogged information and treated it differently. That might be something that happened years ago. It's why if you ever did articles and you sent them to like an online magazine or something, they often didn't want you to have it published anywhere else on the web, even if it was for free, because it didn't have that connection. It was kind of like, oh, you're just, you know, putting the same information up 7 or 8 times, and it wasn't unique. But the reblog button, I think it tells the crawlers, that, you know, the search spiders when they're crawling, that it's okay. Yes, it's been reblogged. It's not just been copied, because otherwise you get people copying everybody's information. Does any of that make sense? I'm a little bit fuzzy-headed today, so.
No, it does make sense because I'm pretty sure the reblog button, I haven't done it in a long time because I'm off of WordPress.com and the .org version doesn't have the reblog option. Or maybe it does and I haven't figured it out yet. I don't really know. But that does make sense. But I'm pretty sure when you did used to reblog stuff, it would reblog to that person's website and it would just like be in its own little bubble. And it would have like an excerpt. And then it would have like a read more button and you would click that and it would bring it to the original article. So I think that's the main difference. It's like you're putting it on your website, but you're not just copy and pasting the whole article.
Yes, I think it's been a while since I've done it, but that does sound familiar. That yeah, it's like part of it, like maybe the first like 300 words, and then there is like continue reading on the original place, and then you click that link and it takes you to the original place where the article is.
Yes. And the original article, that website will get a notification saying, hey, so-and-so reblogged your post. So common courtesy, you would go to their website and comment and say, hey, thanks for reblogging this and sharing this and whatnot. So again, more backlinks, mostly through comments and stuff, but you're still getting people onto your website and giving people to that person too.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And especially they said, because you get the notification that turns out as a does it appear as a comment under the blog saying like reblogged on this website. So anybody going into the comments will see that and they can find that person's blog. And again, you know, it's just spidering out their little webs out there connecting everybody.
Yeah, it has like that longevity. It's just like right in their faces. It's if you're looking in the comments, it's there. But speaking of backlinks and bringing people to their websites and also having people come to your website, another huge benefit of having guests on your blog is just networking in general, just basic connection, engagement, making new friends. Because again, depending on what your niche is for your website, if you're a writer, we'll use that as an example because this is a writing podcast. If you're a writer, you want to make writer friends. And you probably also want to make reader friends. And you want to learn more about writing and your genre, and you want to broaden your horizons and look into new genres and this, that, and the other. And just make friends. Make that connection. But also when you make these connections, you're also learning new things because your guests are probably talking about a topic that you're interested in, that your audience is interested in, but it's not something that you feel too authoritative to talk about yourself. So you bring in a guest and they're also teaching you about book cover design or developmental editing or whatever, because you yourself, you're not a book cover designer or a developmental editor. So you learn new things, you make new friends, you gain more audience, and it's just a nice little cycle.
Yeah, I have to say, a lot of the people I'm friends with now in the writing community, they came from being authors and designers and everything who I found in other blogs and then invited to be guests on mine and vice versa. Because you often find, especially if you're in the same niche, you'll invite someone to be a guest and then they will turn around and invite you. So again, you've got a nice little circle. And I did make a lot of friends with these people. And there's obviously some that I never saw again, but others I have stayed. I mean, me and Rachel, we connected on our blogs. That's how we came to be friends. And then it built up into a game and then a podcast. But yeah, so I can't think of what else I was going to say. So take it away, Rich.
Well, I was just going to ask, did we become friends because I was a guest on your blog or you were a guest on my blog? Or did one of us stumble upon the other's blog? Because I know we have been a guest on each other's blog at one point, but is that how we met? Or did one of us just find the other's website?
I think we found each other's websites. So like one of us found the other person's website and obviously left the odd comment and read the stuff. And then that other person then went and followed, the other one. And I think at one point we reached out and did a guest. And that's where because I mean, you can follow blogs, you can leave comments and everything, but you don't always connect with the author of the blog because depending on how busy they are, they don't always answer all the comments. And sometimes you just don't get that click. But I think we were sort of like chatting with comments, and then it was like, oh, be a guest. And it's just like, whew, I think that's how it was. I'm sure that's how it was. And then we just kept it with it. We did it a few more times. And then we did like round robins or something. We might have done like the round robin.
Oh, yeah.
Questions or something. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago, and I don't remember it because as far as I'm concerned, you and I have always been friends. Like I genuinely cannot remember a time before you and I started talking to each other.
Since the dawn of time, we have been friends.
Yes, exactly.
No, but that's it. It's like, you build these connections and you don't even realize how long. I mean, several of the people who've been on this podcast became friends because we were on blogs, and then they followed us and we were on Twitter and they played the game, and it's like it just they just followed us around. Not that it was like we were leading them or anything, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. But like when you were talking about learning new topics, it reminds me I started a series for a while called A Writer's Guide to blah blah blah. And what I did was I reached out.
That was a good series. Just throwing it out there.
It was. I've actually had a few more people popping back up, but it's like I am considering trying to start it again. But what it was when I was on Twitter playing the game, we had a lot of people playing. So I set out this system where I was asking people, say, like, do you have a skill or an occupation or something that would be really helpful to writers that you would be willing to share in like a 4,000 word article? And I am shocked that a lot of people said yes to writing like 4,000 words. And it is still, to this day, even though I stopped it a couple of years ago, it is still one of the most active areas of my blog. The main one being, I think it's ships and sailing. That one gets so many views. But I had a writer's guide to dance trapeze, journalism, sword fighting, and these were from people who had, or were in these occupations or had done these occupations or had these skills, and they shared things like, well, the outfits you would wear, the training you had to do, the qualifications you needed. And yeah, actually, if it wasn't so much effort and obviously hoping that people would actually complete their article, I just didn't have the time to do it and keep it going. But there is still quite a few there, and I have been thinking about having more. So I may have to reach out again to people. But I learned so much from these articles. I mean, I did it as a resource for other writers, like, hey, do you need to know how to do horseback riding? Look at me saying horseback riding, horse riding. Or do you want to know how to do dance trapeze? Do you have a character in your novel that's going to be in a circus? Here's the information. But as I was getting these articles, it was like I was reading them like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm going to write a book with that character. Oh my God, I need this character. And it has been really good.
No, it was a great series, and I was honestly bummed when it stopped because it's a great learning resource for anything in your novels. And I'm sure the ships and sailing is probably the most popular because people love pirates.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're writing fantasy and they're on boats. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That and the sword fighting was pretty good. But yeah, no, I've had a few friends reach out and be like, oh, I need articles on this, and they've listed like 7 or 8 articles they want in that series. It's like, that series has stopped, right? Maybe. Anyway, before this episode gets too long, I think we've covered some pretty good benefits of why you should have people on your blog. But I'm just gonna throw in things to consider if you decide to have guests. As Rachel and I said, we have done this a lot. We've had loads of guests, for the years we've had our blogs. And over time, you learn things that are important. Things like guidelines. Set yourself up some guidelines because you will be asked a million times by different people, how long does it have to be? Do I need a title? Do you want headers? How long does it have to be? Do you want a title? Does it need headers? Anything like that. Can I swear in it? Obviously, that depends on your blog. Can I put links? Depends what those links are. Create a set of guidelines. You'll probably have to add to them as you do guests, as you deal with guests, because new things will come up. Create an FAQ for your guests. It just saves the millions of emails you will get. Create deadlines and be really clear on those deadlines. The last thing you want to do is give people, oh, yeah, be a guest. And then if you don't give them a deadline, some people need a deadline to work towards. And if you don't, you might never see that article. And if you're trying to plan out your blog content, that's difficult. There were so many times when I had a setup ready for a guest and then they just never turned in their article in time. And I had to keep moving it around. So yeah, deadlines and keep reminders. Etiquette, make sure there's an awareness of what etiquette the guest needs to do. And by that, I don't mean, they have to be addressing you as Lord and Lady, whatever, when they're emailing. We're not talking that. We're talking, tell them politely that you would like them to come back to the article a few days later and reply to the comment. It's quite embarrassing when you have a guest on your blog and people are happy to see them and they leave questions in the comments and then that guest never turns up to answer them. I have had to chase guests and be like, could you come back and answer these questions, please? And as I said before, do check your guest before accepting. I'll be honest, at the beginning when I first started my blog, if somebody reached out to me saying, can I be a guest? Unless it was like Rachel said, some yoga person. And yeah, why is it always yoga? Or what was the other one I used to always get? Accounting, something really random.
I used to get gardening too.
Oh yeah, that was a weird one. What if it was like bots just like circling anyone who had a contact form for guests? They would guest and contact and just like says like, hi, Mr. or Mrs. And it's like, wow, you haven't even checked my name, which is the name of the blog. But yeah, check out guests. I did accept a lot of guests at the beginning and I did not do my due diligence. And then somebody flagged up with me in a private message about a guest I'd had and some questionable things that they had put in another blog. And when I found out about that, I just, took them straight off. Obviously, I might never have found that anyway. It wasn't something that was listed, but it's always best to definitely check out who you're allowing on your blog, who you're connecting with. I mean, obviously, sometimes things happen. You can't protect against everything. You have to go by what you read, what you see, but just try and cover yourself. Make sure you are bringing somebody on who is not going to bring drama, who is not going to bring controversy as much as possible. But yeah, that's just a little thing to think about.
Yeah, well, I'll just add, I mean, I'll kind of piggyback off of that. Make sure that you have guests that you want to be associated with, because as I mentioned earlier, you want to think about your audience as well. If you're going to have a guest on your website, you want to make sure that your audience will actually be interested in what they have to say. And depending on what exactly they have to say, you don't have to agree with it, and your whole audience doesn't have to agree with it, because again, every journey is different and everybody has their own opinion about things, but you want to make sure that it's not going to spark any flames and that it's done in a delicate manner, in a mature manner, I guess, because some people really do have strong opinions and you don't really want that to come across on the page.
Okay, so I hope that was helpful. And if you have a blog and you're considering it, I hope that gave you some ideas. I mean, obviously, that can be transferred into things like having someone you're interviewing on a YouTube channel or a podcast. But yeah, we chose blog because why not? Okay, let's turn over to you guys. Do you accept guest posts on your blog, or have you been a guest on someone else's blog? Let us know your answers in the comments so we can chat about it. Remember, we release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing writers working with beta readers. To ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. And as always, thanks for listening to the Mirror Writer Podcast. See you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Reams of Paper, We're Killing Trees. The music, titled Inspired, is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.